This will be a 6-episode miniseries. I did originally write it for a film script with 4 acts, but just chop and change them, add a couple of side characters in, don't even worry about it. We will open with a prologue. It's going to be a rolling montage of the prequels. It's going to end with a happy Anakin smiling at Obi-Wan, but the image literally burns straight through into an angry Anakin hurling at Obi-Wan on Mustafar with his lightsaber ablaze. Cut to black. Title, 1 year later. Obi-Wan wakes up in a fit of sweat and his own lightsaber is lit. He's looking around and obviously he's alone. He's in a little cabin on Tatooine. It was all a bad dream. So we're going to have some establishing scenes here to follow his day-to-day. He's still young and limber and he's full of hope, but he is frustrated as fuck. He's practicing lightsaber moves, he's using the Force to chop pears. He's meditating, he's still carrying on the traditions of the Jedi Order. In fact, he keeps a little diary. It's very evident that he wants to keep the traditions of the Jedi Temple alive. But at one point he realises he's left his rucksack outside, so he runs back outside to get it, and this nasty sand lizard has buried itself outside his cave, and it's nicked his bag. So he tries fighting with it to get it back, but he gets his ass handed to him. Don't even worry about it. He goes back in the hut and is pretty annoyed. But who's sat there? Yoda. But I thought Yoda was on Dagobah losing his actual mind. You're right, son. They are Force visioning, as introduced in The Last Jedi. Yes, it's validating, it's literal. From Obi-Wan's perspective, Yoda is sat there, but then from Yoda's perspective in his hut, but from Yoda's perspective, Obi-Wan is on Mustafar. It's a pretty low-key character introduction. We are still just in the first episode, and he's just going to be mainly a supporting character. And you've also got to bear in mind as well, unlike when Luke saw him in Last Jedi, Obi-Wan, it's literally just been about a year since they've seen each other. Maybe they've had a little physical correspondence. I mean, probably not, but who knows, it's Star Wars. They're always rewriting those gosh darn films. But Obi-Wan is frustrated, yeah, about the bag, but also with the fact he's been here a year and got nothing done. So he's blowing off at Yoda, who's telling him this whole plan is stupid, and then they're getting him nowhere. Obi-Wan's arguing that they should be training the twins as fighters, but Yoda, he just acts distant and basically ignores Obi-Wan whenever he brings the kids up. So the next day, Obi-Wan goes into town to restock his supplies and ends up getting into a street fight when he sees some thugs beating up this woman. So his rage nearly gets the better of him, and he does go for a saber, but he's stopped by a humble barman, who, for now, is just going to be called Mike. And Mike helps him see reason. Mike's not an undercover Jedi or anything, but he is hiding from the Empire. He's got skeletons in the closet. They go into the bar. Obi-Wan's got a regular seat set up, and although he never drinks, he does come here often. And in the corner, all the patrons are being berated and constantly shouted at by this very sarcastic droid called L4. So they sort of talk, and Mike's all like, hey, you know, that was pretty dangerous out there. You nearly blew your cover. And Obi-Wan's like, you all want to bloody talk about blowing your cover, mate. You're hiding from the Empire, but you're having a love affair with a moisture farmer called Yolanda. And Mike's all like, hey, don't you mention Yolanda. And then they laugh, they banter. But suddenly, Yolanda runs in with her daughter. They've just escaped a raid on a nearby farm, and a bad one by the sounds of it. Mike comforts her, but then him and Obi-Wan venture out to assess the damage. And whilst they can't get too close, they see from afar that the farm has been raided and torched. Mike says, what, is this Tusken Raiders? But Obi-Wan thinks it's worse. Yolanda confirms that this was the work of a local crime family that Mike is all too familiar with. And so we see this rolling montage of Obi-Wan. He's doing some detective work. He's following leads, you know, he's looking at like the tracks in the sand and everything. Eventually he finds an associate of the crime syndicate and manages to kidnap him. He gets him in the back of the bar, and Mike does not think he's going to get anything from him. He's like, you can try, but this guy's never going to talk. And Obi-Wan tries all the delicate, all the political, diplomatic methods to try and get this guy to talk, but this guy is a scumbag. He's horrible. He's like one of those nasty aliens from the bar, and he jokes, you know, he's like, oh, that farm, yeah, we've touched like 100 farms in a week, you know, some of them had children on, ha ha ha. And this gets Obi-Wan. He freaks out. He force choke. He can't help himself. He actually ends up force choking this guy accidentally, and he's horrified by what he's done. But the guy obviously begs for mercy, and he's like, please, I'll tell you anything. Obi-Wan stops choking him and tells him, well, Obi-Wan's like, well, tell us where this family are and I'll let you go. So he does. So that's probably your episode 1. Episode 2 is a travelling episode where Obi-Wan and Mike travel to Mos Eisley, and Obi-Wan learns just how wretched a hive of scum and villainy that it is. This crime family have a big influence over the area, so Obi-Wan has to like sneak into the base, gets up close, and eventually he does kill the warlord. Peace has been restored back to the land, back to Tatooine. All the henchmen sort of run away scared, and while Obi-Wan's looking through the warlord stuff, he finds a device that's been used to track Imperials. When Obi-Wan gets back to Mike's bar, he turns to L4 and he says, "Hey, could you rig this up to track Jedi?" And of course L4 thinks this is ridiculous. She's like, you can't just track Jedi, like Imperials have codes and half of them are ex-clone troopers anyway who have chips in their heads, and then Obi-Wan explains about midichlorians and about sort of how they work and gives her a sample of his blood, and she says, well look, it's going to take me a while, but let me see what I can do. Third episode will open with a title card saying 5 years later. This will open with a flashback set between Phantom and Attack of the Clones. Obi-Wan's training a young Anakin, he's struggling to use the Force, his mind is too clogged up and Obi-Wan wants to help him free it up. He says you gotta learn to let go, stop worrying about your mother and all that crap. So Obi-Wan's doing odd jobs around his hut, and who should appear but the little Luke Skywalker. And they talk and Obi-Wan has to remain distant, and when Luke asks his name he kinda panics and just says, well, it's Ben. They have a pretty chill time, Obi-Wan showing Luke around the place and stuff, and you know, basic, here's how a farm is. And when Obi-Wan returns Luke back to the Lars homestead, he's all tuckered out. Uncle Owen is waiting for him, and he shouts at him and tells him, you leave us alone, if you're around, the Empire can't be far behind, which really bums Obi-Wan out. So Obi-Wan goes farming, and he's had 5 years in the game, but he's still not the best at it, so he gets his ass handed to him by local wildlife. Wanting to drown his sorrows, he goes back to the bar. There's Mike, Yolinda, and L4's had some updates recently. She's talking about, hey, do you remember that scanner you gave me a few years ago? Well, I sort of managed to rig it up. It's took a while, but, you know, through this combination of updates and timey-wimey, it works now. So she turns it on, and obviously they all gather around, fully expecting it not to make a sound, but it beeps. It's programmed to track nearby Jedi, and it's beeping. There's a Jedi nearby. Mike and L4 remind Obi-Wan that he swore never to leave Tatooine, but he storms off anyway, saying, look, guys, I do appreciate what you're saying, but there's another Jedi out there. I can't just leave him. So that's about the end of the third episode. The fourth episode, he digs up his old Jedi starfighter, which is obviously buried under the sand, and he goes and follows the tracking signal. The planet he lands on is really hard to maneuver. It's overgrown, and the Force is strong and concentrated here. Obi-Wan hears the voices of other Jedi sort of talking to him. You've got your Cypher Dyas, your Dooku's, your Qui-Gons. So he's manoeuvring the landscape, and he finally finds the Jedi, who originally she mistakes him for an Empire spy. But Obi-Wan calms her down and explains it's okay. Look, it's me. And she does recognise him, eventually. She makes him some tea, or blue milk of choice. And he explains it's okay. Look, this is amazing. Look, you're an actual Jedi. We're both Jedi. Yeah, we're a few years out of the game, but we can work together. But she's got scars. She is mortified about what she saw during Order 66, and seeing the state of him only confirms this. And he's forced to sort of look back on himself and see how bedraggled and scruffy he is looking.
Who's scruffy looking?
How he's still holding on. And he tells her, he says, look, I can retrain a new brand of Jedi, don't worry about it. We can do it in secret, but I've still got all the books, all the texts, I took from the Jedi archives. And she lashes at him. She's like, the Jedi archives. She's like, look at us. We let our hubris get to us. We thought we knew everything. The dark side of the Force was under our noses the whole time. We didn't even realise. She says, the Jedi are gone. Just leave them. Just let them go. So on his way out, all this Force energy is still moving around, and he sees Yoda again. Now, Yoda doesn't exactly shout at him, but he just says it's unwise that he's here and not watching over young Skywalker. Obi-Wan doesn't want to listen. He says, look, I've been watching him for 5 years straight. I'm allowed a break. Yoda tells him while he's here he should stop taking the beauty here. On this planet, the Force is unaffected by the current state of things. He tells Obi-Wan that the Force always finds a way, but Obi-Wan doesn't want to hear it. He's just had the Jedi verbally ripped to shreds in front of him. He doesn't know what to feel right now. He's conflicted. He storms off. So back home, he goes to the bar. The guys all ask him how it went, but he doesn't want to talk about it. He sits at the bar. There's a beat. And he says to Mike, I think I'll have that drink now. So a few hours pass. Obi-Wan's had a fair few drinks, and he can hear some kids outside who are being treated pretty nastily by, a slave owner or whatever. So Obi-Wan very slyly just flicks his fingers, just uses the Force to manipulate some of the things around him, some of their toys and boxes and stuff, and they're laughing and smiling and playing, and it makes him quite happy. Maybe things, if he's got to be stuck here, maybe things can't be so bad after all. So episode 5 picks up 10 years later. Now this flashback takes place in the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan and Anakin, they are best buddies, but Anakin's angst is coming through, and Obi-Wan's telling him not to give in to it. Obi-Wan's sort of pressing in, saying, well, what about your last trip with Senator Amidala? But Annie doesn't want to hear it. Back in present time, we're on an Empire scouting ship where they've got a device that looks pretty similar to the one that Obi-Wan stole from the Warlord. The officers discuss that one of their hostages has finally talked, and they've pinned everything on a man called Mike, who is based on Tatooine. So the cruise ship comes down to Tatooine, and they come out in sort of prototype versions of AT-ATs, and they rip Mike out of the bar, they forcibly take him. Obi-Wan has to watch from a distance. The townspeople are terrified of the Empire, but Yolanda isn't taking any of it. She's arguing with them, she's trying to stop him. The officers throw her off, and Mike struggles against his restraints. Obi-Wan runs out of the shadows to help her up. She's panicking, thinking, no, they'll see you, they'll see you. The officers don't even recognise him. They just brush him off as some old man and go back into the transport machine. But the transport doesn't leave. So Yolanda and Obi-Wan are talking in the bar, and L4 encourages them to sneak aboard the ship and get Mike out while the ship's still parked there. There's stormtrooper patrols all around Tatooine, and Yolanda and Obi-Wan manage to hijack a couple and steal their armor, and they sneak aboard the shuttle. Obi-Wan hears a couple of officers talking about Darth Vader's fondness for this planet, but they still think it's stupid that they have to wait this long before they can leave. Obi-Wan's intrigued and he holds back to sort of listen more, but Yolanda goes on, just frustrated with him. The officers comment that Vader's recalled all the soldiers from the area for the night, but there's 2 that haven't returned, and one of them asks, why would he want the area deserted for the evening? Yolanda drops down to the detention level and blags away past the stormtroopers, and she finds Mike. They have a touching heart-to-heart, but before she can help him, Darth Vader appears and faces up to Yolanda. You shouldn't be here, he says, lighting his saber. Obi-Wan listens in agony as one of the officers reveals that he thinks Vader used to live here as a young lad. Maybe a slave boy who made it out. He had to learn all those Jedi tricks from somewhere, right? The truth dawns on Obi-Wan and he scrambles down the air vent looking for Yolanda. He sees her limp body next to Mike's and makes a run for it. Outside he racks his head, he's in tears, he's majorly overwhelmed. Darth Vader comes out of the shuttle, and in a scene set to the Imperial March in minor key, he walks around the area and takes it all in. He throws back a tarp and sees an old pod racer just off to the side. Obi-Wan watches and he is pissed. He's trembling with anger, he can't believe what he's seeing. He reaches for his lightsaber. Vader senses his presence and turns, almost looking directly at him. His breathing stops for just a second and Obi-Wan's mouth drops open. Are they about to speak? Then, an officer calls down from the ship. Sorry, Lord Vader, but we've had an urgent message from the Emperor. Vader goes back inside, and the shuttle leaves. Back at his hut, Obi-Wan is relieved that Anakin is alive, but he's mortified at the monster that he's become. He shouts at Yoda for not telling him the truth. Yoda cites that it would have hurt too much. Obi-Wan throws things around, he chops things in half with his lightsaber, and he cries and he screams out. He collapses to the floor, and Yoda puts a hand on his shoulder. 2 Jedi. Lost out of time. Episode 7 opens with a title that reads 15 years later. Now this is not going to be a flashback, or a flash forward, but a flash sideways.
Huh?
We're going to see an old Obi-Wan just sat calmly on a porch looking over at alien sunset. We're going to hear that familiar breathing. Out steps a largely undamaged Anakin Skywalker. This is a version of the characters we never got to see. No Darth Vader, no battle on Mustafar. Anakin has been injured at some point, and they're going to talk about that, so he does have a breathing machine. It's a lot less intrusive than Darth Vader's was. The 2 old men sit on the porch, fully digitally remastered Sebastian Shaw and Alec Guinness. They talk about the Clone Wars, they talk about Anakin's close brush with the dark side, they joke about midichlorians. All is well. They talk about how the world is peaceful, how the galaxy is finally at peace, and how at one point this seemed impossible. As we slowly fade into reality, Anakin disappears, and Obi-Wan is revealed to us, old and crusty. He's fully transcended into Alec Guinness territory now.
Hello there.
So in regards to this last 2 episodes, I'm pretty open as to what content we can put here. Obi-Wan leaves his hut and he easily beats that creature from the first episode. He goes to the bar, and he likes the new barman nice enough, but he's no Mike. These days, he drinks a lot, he lets loose. One night he has one too many and is spotted by a young Luke Skywalker. way too young to be there, who recognises him as crazy old Ben. Biggs bets him to go over and talk to Obi-Wan, and they have this awkward interaction where Obi-Wan is bladdered, like he is drunk, but he's still got it in his head that he can't let Luke know what's happening. The new barman asks Obi-Wan for some help, and he doesn't really know who else to ask. The old robot is dying, and these days the parts are too expensive to fix her. L4's stretched out along the counter, all her parts in different bits and bats and states of disarray. Obi-Wan holds onto a robotic head as her lights go out. In regards to what else can happen in these last 2 episodes, I'm really easy. Thematically, we've had Vader, Yoda, and another Jedi, so it would be fun to bring Maul into it. But the problem with that is, Rebels already did it. And unless we just do the same scene beat for beat, it's not going to be very impactful. Some of the fanboys want to stretch out and include a Boba Fett subplot here. You could tie it into a solo sequel with another Jedi trying to seek Obi-Wan out, because obviously 15 years after Order 66, the legend of Obi-Wan could have travelled quite far. But as I say, I'm pretty easy. I don't think it should be anything too high stakes. I don't think Obi-Wan should be rolling around a sandcrawler or anything. What I do know is what one of the final scenes is. He returns home after a pretty emotional day of it. He's got the holocron of Satine in his hand, and he's crying himself to sleep at night, when a hand places itself on its shoulder. The Force ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. Well, Obi-Wan springs out of bed and he's humbled, and he even gives a little bow, but Qui-Gon tells him not to stand on ceremony, as he's got a bigger role to play yet. The time will come when he faces Anakin again, and Obi-Wan must be ready. And while Obi-Wan isn't sure he can do this, because Vader is massively overpowered, the whole galaxy fears him, but Qui-Gon assures him that he will better him in ways that Vader can't even comprehend. Trust in the Force, Qui-Gon says. It trusts in you. Obi-Wan goes out and looks out onto the binary sunset, and we hear a very familiar cue. Camera pans to the binary sunset for a few seconds, takes it in. When we cut back, it's a young Luke Skywalker from A New Hope. He's looking out at that same sunset too. Obi-Wan was looking at the same sunset as he was. Then we pan out, cut to credits.